The transformation happens when she stops living depending on his reaction and lives according to her truth. The woman knows she deserves a love that does not silence her, but she knows the process is slow and cannot accelerate it. There is an almost imperceptible yet destructive moment when a woman senses something has shifted. The man who once felt so close begins to pull away. Suddenly, his messages become slower. His words sound colder. His attention is harder to get. And at that instant, a shadow falls. Anxiety, fear, and a sense of loss begin to consume from within. Jung, in his book, The Dynamics of the Unconscious, explains that everything the soul clings to too tightly tends to slip away, like sand through fingers. The more we display neediness, the quicker we risk losing what we are trying to hold on to. What we often fail to understand is that in male psychology, what is hard to get has greater value. A man feels more desire for what he feels he could lose than for what he perceives as guaranteed. Driven by this deep fear of losing him, many women make the most human and yet the most counterproductive mistake. They try to do more. They send a message, seek explanations, suggest dates, and attempt to rekindle what they feel slipping through their fingers. However, this persistence, though born from love and fear, only hastens the decline because, to a man, excessive neediness is not attraction. It is pressure. It is not love. It is a burden. A woman who is too available, too attentive, leaving no room for absence, ultimately becomes emotionally invisible. Excessive accessibility kills the mystery, and mystery is the oxygen of desire. Imagine a precious gem displayed on every corner. Over time, it loses its value in the eyes of those who see it. But if that jewel is unique, rare, and hard to obtain, it becomes coveted, almost sacred. That is how human desire works. That is how male desire works. And if he does not return, you will gain someone far more important: yourself. Prepare yourself, because once you understand this, you will never chase again. You will learn to attract. Today, I will show you how to radically transform this dynamic, not through cheap games or manipulation, but from a place of deep emotional wisdom. You will learn the art of strategic silence, not as punishment, but as an act of self-respect. You will understand how to invest all that energy in yourself until you become a woman so complete, so attractive, so satisfied that his return, if it happens, will be a free choice, not a result of pressure. Each minute without an answer feels like an eternity. Every cold or distant conversation is analyzed and reanalyzed in search of signs, explanations, someone to blame. The mind falls into an endless cycle. What did I do wrong? How can I fix this? How can I put everything back in its place? And with each thought, the heart shrinks even more. Jung, in his work, Psychological Types, warns us that a person suffers because they mistakenly interpret what is happening inside them as something happening outside them. In other words, we believe that the cause of our suffering lies in the other, when in reality, it is an internal struggle between our unfulfilled desires and our perception of our own value. When a man begins to withdraw, the first emotional reaction of many women is a profound sense of loss. It is not just the loss of the person, but the loss of the illusion of an imagined future, of moments, of an emotionally safe space that his presence represented. This loss, although intangible, strikes a cruel blow. Anxiety settles in quietly. Neediness smells of desperation, and desperation repels human desire. As Jung accurately points out in Psychology of the Unconscious, desire is born from mystery, from longing, from the space between me and the other, not from control or possession. Thus, without realizing it, when we try to forcefully maintain a connection that we feel is crumbling, we end up tearing it apart even more. This anxiety and helplessness are not only painful, but emotionally dangerous. Under their influence, many women fall into behaviors they would never consider in a balanced emotional state. They beg for attention, ask insistent questions, seek answers where there is only silence. And the more a person acts from this state of fear and neediness, the worse the woman's perception becomes for the man. Because in his instinctive psychology, a man does not feel attracted to someone who seems to need him for survival. It is an act of immense courage to stop in the midst of anxiety. And paradoxically, it is the first act of true self-love. Not love for him, but love for yourself. We want to get closer, but in that desperate attempt, we move further away. We want to hold on, but the fear of losing makes him run. That is why the first step is not to do more. The first step is to stop. Breathe. Acknowledge the pain, yes, but do not act based on it. Because every action dictated by fear is another brick in the wall that separates us from what we desire. Faced with the fear of losing a man who begins to withdraw, many women find that intensifying their efforts is almost an instinctive impulse. If I am more present, more loving, and more available, he will remember why he loved me and will return. However, this reasoning, although seemingly logical from a place of pain, actually goes against male psychology. Every extra message, every forced attempt to connect, every search for reassurance does not restore the connection. It erodes it because the primary message a man perceives is not love, but neediness. It is not connection, but a clutch. It is important to understand that people, men and women, perceive emotional vibrations long before we process them rationally. He is not pulling away because he is coldly analyzing you. He is pulling away because something in his instincts shouts that something has changed. Carl Jung, in Symbols of Transformation, teaches that what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. Denying the anxiety we feel pushes us to act out of desperation. Acceptance, on the other hand, gives us the power to transform it into inner strength. When we refuse to accept the possibility of losing him, we become prisoners of fear. And that fear permeates every word, every movement, and every insistent demand. The man, without even realizing it, feels repelled by this energy. Imagine a flower for a moment. A flower does not chase the bees. It does not beg them to pollinate it. It remains in its essence, open, beautiful, and radiant, allowing the bees to discover and appreciate it for what it is. They do not value what they believe is guaranteed. Jung, in Ego and the Unconscious, indicates that the soul instinctively yearns for what it has not yet possessed, because in desire lies its vital impulse. A man desires what presents an emotional challenge, something he must conquer again and again. That is how female self-respect should be. A quiet strength, not a desperate pursuit. When a woman rushes to do more, to write, to call, and to seek forced meetings, she unconsciously sends a devastating message. Without you, I am not good enough. And that message undermines attractiveness at its very root. The paradox is that the more a woman tries to maintain a connection with insistence, the faster she repels the man. Because in the male consciousness, conquest is important. Forcing someone to stay is like trying to hold water in your hands by squeezing them harder. The more force you apply, the faster it slips away. It is an act of desperation that ultimately steals your own emotional dignity. When a man senses that a woman needs his presence to feel valuable, his instinct drives him to seek freedom because his subconscious tells him that there is no genuine admiration there, only an invisible demand that suffocates him. That is why the key is not to do more, not to chase him, not to beg for attention, and not to try to prove your worth. The true power lies in stepping back, reconnecting with yourself, and stopping the need for external validation. When a woman stops fighting to be chosen and starts choosing herself, something changes radically. Her energy transforms. She ceases to be a need and becomes a gift. She ceases to be an obligation and becomes an irresistible choice. When a woman's soul connects with her value, she begins to radiate a different purity, a mixture of tranquility, mystery, and fulfillment that cannot be ignored. This energy not only attracts men, but also acts as a filter, because a man who is not ready for a woman in her power will not be able to withstand her presence. It is not about feigning indifference or playing mind games. It is about a genuine change within you. A change that quietly says, I desire you, but I don't need you. I can love you, but I won't lose my soul to keep you. And only then can a new connection arise, not based on fear, but on admiration, not based on lack, but on genuine desire. The mistake of doing more to avoid losing him may seem, amidst the pain, to be the only way out. But now you know the truth. You don't need to do more for him. You need to do more for yourself. And it is at that moment, when you no longer fight, when you no longer beg, and when you have found your own center, that the real magic happens. The man who feels your absence, not as a strategy, but as a natural consequence of your love for yourself, will begin to see something far more valuable in you than he ever perceived. A complete, free, and strong woman. There is a fundamental truth in human nature. We value more what is scarce. This law governs not only economics, but also the emotional and relational world. That which is offered in abundance, that which is always available, ends up being undervalued. Love, desire, and admiration are fueled by a sense of exclusivity, conquest, and the possibility of loss. And this is especially true for male psychology. A man values what he feels he cannot fully possess. He values what he needs to conquer constantly. When a woman becomes too accessible, too predictable, and too devoted, she unconsciously ceases to present an emotional challenge. And when there is no challenge, there is no drive to conquer. When there is no conquest, attraction diminishes. Carl Jung, in Psychology of the Unconscious, explains that true desire is born from longing, and longing only exists in emotional distance. When we are too close, too available, we kill that necessary distance where desire can flourish. Imagine a rare gemstone hidden deep within an inaccessible cave. Those who know of its existence are willing to risk, explore, and invest time and effort to reach it, not because she is playing games, but because her completeness makes her inaccessible to those who are not ready to deserve her. Excessive availability sends another dangerous message to the dynamics of attraction. It transmits that your time, your attention, and your love are available to anyone without conditions, without the need to earn them, and in the male subconscious, this reduces your value. A man seeks not only love, but also admiration. He wants to feel that he has conquered something valuable, that his presence, his efforts, and his devotion have meaning. If he senses that there is no need to make an effort, that your love is already guaranteed, his vital impulse to conquer fades, not because he is a bad person, but because it is part of his instinctive nature. Now, imagine that same gemstone offered freely on a common table, accessible to everyone without any effort. The perception of value changes, not because the treasure itself has changed, but because the perception of its rarity has changed. The same thing happens in emotional dynamics. A woman who maintains her mystery, her inner world, and her rich and independent life becomes a difficult gemstone to reach. This devotion, although noble in its intention, is toxic to attraction. A woman who actively lives her life, maintains her friendships, is passionate about her hobbies, and invests in her personal growth, sends a much more powerful message. I choose you because I want to, not because I need to. And that emotional freedom is deeply seductive. If you want to be unforgettable to a man, do not give him your life. Give him the opportunity to be part of it, without making him its absolute center. Be a whole universe around which he wants to revolve, not a satellite orbiting him. The perfect balance is to show genuine interest without dependence, to demonstrate affection without rushing, and to offer presence without unconditional availability. Jung accurately states this in Symbols of Transformation. Passion ignites in the human heart, where the object of desire is shrouded in mystery and inaccessibility. When a woman disappears as an emotional challenge, desire also disappears. Many times, in the name of love, a woman gives all her time, her attention, her social life, her projects, and without realizing it, she places the man at the center of her existence. You are not here to be easily conquered. You are here to be valued, admired, and above all, respected. When a woman feels that a special man begins to withdraw, the first natural, almost uncontrollable impulse is to try to close that distance with words, explanations, justifications, or promises. When a woman masters this art, the art of being generous in love, but selective with her energy, her value automatically increases in the eyes of any man. Not because she manipulated him, but because she restored the natural balance between giving and receiving, between presence and mystery. Remember, what is common is forgotten. What is rare is valued. This is an impulse born from a deep fear of losing what once seemed secure. However, in the subtle art of human relationships, there is a power far more potent than trying to hold on. Strategic silence. We're not talking about silence filled with resentment or intended to punish. It's not about ignoring to cause pain or to manipulate, but about making a conscious act of emotional wisdom. She does not need to talk about her value. She exudes it. At the deepest level, the soul must also be reconnecting with genuine friendships, dedicating time to activities that inspire you, and surrounding yourself with beauty, art, nature, everything that reminds you that your life has a higher purpose than simply being loved by someone else. As Jung said in The Dynamics of the Unconscious, resisting an impulse is not suppression. It is transformation. True silence is the transformation of anxiety into calm, of neediness into strength. It is in silence that who you really are is revealed. A woman who invests in herself, continues to learn, and is not afraid to grow, radiates an irresistible vibration of quiet strength. It is no coincidence that when a woman focuses on her personal development, those who once took her for granted begin to feel her absence as a void that is difficult to ignore, because she is no longer the same. She has evolved, she has been reborn, and she did not do it to prove anything to anyone. She did it because, somewhere in the pain, she understood a radical truth. The most important person who had to choose her was herself. Reclaiming yourself does not mean closing your heart or becoming cold. It means loving with an open heart, but with a firm foundation beneath your feet. It means being able to receive love without losing yourself in the process. It means looking love in the eye and saying, "I love you, but I don't need you to be who I am." On this new path, the man who returns, if he returns, will find a different woman, a woman who can love him deeply, but is no longer willing to lose herself for anyone. And if he does not return, it will not matter, because she will find something far more important: her own life, her purpose, her happiness. Jung perfectly summarizes this in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, when he states, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. You have chosen the path of awakening, the path of courage, and each step in your recovery will be a silent victory that resonates throughout your being. Today, you understand that it is not about getting him back. It is about getting yourself back. Mastering your emotions does not mean suppressing or denying them. It means learning to manage them with awareness, strength, and dignity. In the process of regaining personal power, The difference between an unforgettable woman and a forgotten one lies in her ability to manage her emotional impulses, especially in moments of greatest vulnerability. In the process of regaining personal power, the difference between an unforgettable woman and a forgotten one lies in her ability to control her emotional impulses, especially in moments of greatest vulnerability. When a man begins to withdraw, a woman's instinctive desire is to seek answers, impose meetings, and demand explanations. The energy that was once directed towards him now becomes a centrifugal force, creating your own universe. And when a woman becomes her own universe, when her happiness no longer depends on external factors, something extraordinary happens. Her vibration rises to a level that not only attracts, but also filters, because not all men will be able to rise to the level of a woman who no longer needs to be chosen. That is human. That is understandable. However, it is in these moments that true emotional worth is defined, not by succumbing to the impulse to act out of fear, but by choosing to act from awareness and self-love. Carl Jung, in Ego and the Unconscious, points out that the greatest obstacle to progress is the projection of our internal conflicts onto the external world. Emotional mastery, therefore, is the ability to observe the internal storm without becoming it. It means understanding that experiencing fear, sadness, or uncertainty is natural, but acting impulsively based on these emotions only distances us from what we truly want. Building healthy, loving relationships based on mutual respect. Here we must understand the crucial difference between healthy desire and toxic attachment. Wanting someone is natural, even beautiful, but depending emotionally on their presence to feel valuable destroys any possibility of genuine love. Attachment, unlike desire, arises from an internal lack. If we allow anxiety to guide our actions, we project that longing onto the other, burdening the relationship with unbearable pressure. But if we are capable of holding ourselves emotionally, without demands, without pursuits, and without pleas, then we rise above the storm and become a beacon of stability. It leads us to believe that our happiness depends on another person. And by surrendering our power in this way, we become vulnerable, anxious, and ultimately less attractive. A woman who masters her emotions does not deny her feelings, but neither does she allow them to control her. And that energy is so powerful, so magnetic, that it transcends words. It can be felt in the way you walk, in your gaze, in the way you exist in the world. A woman who does not need to be chosen to know her value radiates a vibration that no man can ignore. Emotional mastery not only changes the dynamics with others, it changes your entire life. It frees you from the roller coaster of emotions that depend on external factors and places you firmly in the driver's seat of your emotional destiny. And when a woman reaches this level of maturity, she ceases to be merely an option and becomes a conscious choice, desired and admired. Jung also reminds us in Psychology of the Transference that whoever looks outside dreams. Whoever looks inside awakens. Emotional mastery is precisely that awakening, ceasing to seek outside what can only be found within. Today you know that mastering your emotions is not denying your humanity. It is not about suppressing your desires, but about acknowledging them without allowing them to define your worth. It is not about being insensitive. It is about being invincible. Because in the end, a woman who conquers her inner world is a woman who conquers the external world without needing to chase it. There comes an inevitable and blessed moment in the journey of a woman who has worked on herself when she understands a liberating truth. She is not here to be chosen by someone. She is here to choose herself every day, to remain true to her essence, to build a life so rich, full, and authentic that her well-being no longer depends on the presence or absence of another person. When a woman reaches this level of consciousness, her energy changes radically. She no longer presents herself to the world in search of approval, love, or validation. She presents herself as a source of self-love so powerful that those around her have only two options: rise to meet her or walk away. And in both cases, she wins. Carl Jung, in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, tells us that an unlived life is a disease one can die from. Living in anticipation of being chosen, postponing your happiness until someone notices you, approves of you, or validates you, is dying slowly. Choosing yourself, on the other hand, is healing. It is living. When a woman stops trying to be an option for a man and instead becomes the prize that only the truly worthy can obtain, something powerful happens. She ceases to be a passive possibility in the minds of others and becomes an unforgettable presence. She does not beg for love, does not ask for attention, does not compete, does not chase. She simply is. And in that authenticity lies her irresistible magnetism. If he returns, it will be because in your absence, he felt the void of your absence, not the burden of pursuit. It will be because in the silence of your departure, he realized that no one else radiates the same light, the same calm strength that you possess. And if he does not return, you will understand that he was never truly yours, and that your path, far from being in vain, led you back to yourself. Because in this process, what you have gained is invaluable: your worth, your inner peace, your emotional freedom. Always remember, you are not here to be completed by someone. You are already whole. You are not here to be validated. Your existence in itself is sufficient validation. You are not here to live through the eyes of others. You are here to look at your own reflection and feel proud of yourself. Jung said that those who do not become themselves become echoes of others' expectations. Today, you choose to be a voice, not an echo, a path, not someone else's destination. It is at this moment, when you no longer need to be chosen, that your energy becomes so authentic, so radiant, and so magnetic that those who once took you for granted will feel your absence as an impossible void that cannot be ignored. She may crave an answer, but still choose silence. She may feel the urge to reach out, but still choose to remain focused. This inner strength is not cold or distant. It is the highest expression of self-love. It is the ability to say to yourself, my worth does not change depending on the presence or absence of anyone. I am good enough. I am whole.